TFD Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Sullivan, and this is the show where we break down popular science into easily digestible and actionable information to give you the blueprint to be a high performer in your life. Today, I'm joined by TFD Performance Dietitian Loz Nash, and we're discussing our top tips for athletes to stay on top of their nutrition when they are traveling. Now that travel is ramping up again, many athletes and teams are finding themselves making the trip to the airport in order to compete, and many are facing the difficult task of navigating their nutritional requirements with what they can find at the airport. Today, Loz and I break down some simple and proven methods that you can use right now that will make your life much easier when your next competition trip comes around. Let's get to it.
I feel like that really just killed my confidence, that last one. Anyway, welcome back. So glad we're doing it again. I feel like I need to just get really good at being thrown on the spot within 0.7 seconds.
That's the way we roll.
That's the way we roll. Anyway, morning, Geordie. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going very well. Looking forward to it. Another podcast. Today, Loz and I are going to be talking about something that we both have some good experience in, and that's travel nutrition. So it's going to be a really good one.
Definitely. And I think it's an important consideration for, obviously, yes, everyday people that are just going on a vacay, probably not as important for them, but for clients like yourself, Geordie, we've got top level athletes traveling all across the country, all across the globe. Training, preparing for an event is stressful enough as it is without having to obviously factor in flying, driving, new places, different languages. And traveling can have a bigger impact than you think on nutrition and training and your body's response as well. So I think, last week we spoke about altitude training. That's a factor, but travel is a big factor as well. So today we're going to be kind of talking about common issues that come up when you're traveling, and also how to overcome these and kind of set yourself up for the best success before you even leave home.
Yeah, and it's super applicable to a lot of people, right? Like, yeah, we work with a lot of top level athletes, and especially like with what we do, say with our top UFC guys, like they're going to leave a week or two and they're cutting weight and they're on pretty strict diets. So super important for them to have a good plan while they're traveling, because especially during COVID, that was an interesting time. Like a lot of things at airports weren't open. We'll talk about that, or you can't just get access to things. And we had to fly all these weird ways. So you're almost flying for 2 or 3 days at some stages, but it's not just applicable for those high level athletes. Like it's applicable for people like you and me, Loz. Like if we're training a lot and like you just enjoy eating certain foods, or you enjoy eating a certain way and you just want to feel good, when you go to an airport and those options are taken away, it's like, how do you navigate that?
Definitely. And I think it's important as well to clarify, for anyone that's listening, we're not necessarily saying that if you're going on the best vacation of your life or you're going on your honeymoon, that you have to stick to your nutrition plan and you have to follow a diet, because traveling is that one time, obviously, in everyone's schedules where rules go out the window. You're having beers at 6 a.m. at the airport, you're at the buffet, you're by the pool. But this episode is more so, dedicated to people that unfortunately don't have that freedom, and they might be making weight whilst traveling, or they have goals that they want to achieve. So this podcast is really to try and set you up with tools and strategies to stick to your plan as best as possible while traveling.
Yeah, I mean, if you go on holiday and you don't have a burger and beer before 10 a.m. and you're at the airport, like, are you really going on holiday, right?
No rules at the airport. And obviously, beers, whatever time, increased cost, $10,000 for a coffee. It's a crazy time.
Yeah, it's funny what brought this on, and I wanted to talk about, it's one of the points I want to make a bit later on, is I actually went through with my accountant with all my spending now that I have to wear big boy pants and go through all these things. And one of the comments she made was, the amount of money you're spending at airports is ridiculous. And it is. And it's a point we'll talk about later in like pre-preparing foods or eating before you go. But that's a massive consideration, right? It's like airports are expensive.
It's so true. And I think that's always been the case. But I feel with the increased cost of everything at the moment, it's just being compounded. I mean, I was at the markets the other day, bought an ice long black. It was smaller than the palm of my hand. I'm pretty sure they only put one shot in there, and it cost me $5.50. And I thought, 2022, things are just getting out of hand. And that is definitely true for airports. So, kicking off implications, I reckon, with travel nutrition, Geordie, that's one of the first things is it can be really expensive. Traveling, whether you're at an airport, you're in the middle of the country on a road trip, you've got one fuel station, everything is going to be marketed about 50% more. You've got limited choice at airports, or again, wherever you're traveling. Might not even be options. You've got limited access just in general. So there's a lot of things, that can impact your nutrition. We've got, depending where you're traveling, you might be traveling overseas, you've got foreign brands, you've got foreign language, possibly even, you're looking at things and thinking, what on earth is this? Doesn't have a photo on it, not even sure. Different food safety standards, which we'll talk about later, because every country isn't as on top of things as, say, Australia, for example, in terms of food safety. You've got jet lag, which is a big one that we'll talk about, traveling over time zones, missing meals, your circadian rhythm gets all messed up. You've got water retention. A lot of people report feeling a bit bloated or a bit puffy while they travel. A big thing I notice all the time, and everyone will be like, yep, is boredom eating. You're sitting on a plane for 16 hours. What are you going to do? Watch a movie and eat. It's even if the food's bad, you're still going to go for that really cold, frozen steel bread roll that comes on your breakfast tray with the butter that is still super hard because you've got nothing better to do.
Yeah, I used to do this a lot, not so much nowadays, but it was almost out of habit, right? Because what do you do when you're on those long haul flights? Is you watch movies, and it's like, what are you used to doing when you're watching movies? And it's like you're used to snacking, so it's almost like a thing of comfort, and you just revert. And I used to do that a lot, and you get 2 or 3 movies deep, and you're like, oh, I just smashed 3 packets of pods, and you're like, oh man, what am I doing? But it's not the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, especially for those people that are traveling, for pure enjoyment reasons.
Yeah, exactly. So I think let's start with airports, because I think a lot of people listening to this now, COVID's kind of relaxed a bit. A lot of people are traveling. There are a lot of athletes that are traveling, and they're going to be, they probably haven't traveled for a while. They probably haven't traveled a lot during COVID. So let's go through a few of these strategies that we recommend if you are going. Let's focus on airports just to start.
Definitely. I think that's a really good point that you made as well, because during COVID times, you'd get to the airport and you'd be lucky if one cafe was open. That obviously restricts your choices significantly. And something personally that I found is because now, unfortunately, with being celiac, I have to go for gluten-free options. My already small pool of options is just narrowed even more. So I'm lucky if maybe I can just grab a coffee. So apart from the fact about limited choices, obviously you have to consider your dietary requirements. Do you have allergies? Are you celiac? Are you lactose intolerant? Because all of those factors as well are going to influence your options at airports. And I think, depending if we're talking about domestic travel or international travel, that can also dictate some of the strategies that we'll talk about, because I can only speak for Australia really in terms of our border patrol is quite strict, and you can't even take an apple from one state to the other. And it's the same if you're traveling internationally. Typically, you can't take, say, fresh foods or unsealed foods with you. So a big thing that we like to recommend is having snacks on hand. However, it is important to kind of do a little bit of research in terms of, am I going to get pulled up at security for taking my apple on the plane with me? Because then again, you don't want to be stripped of your only snack options. But Geordie, you get us started because you've done a lot of traveling lately, and in airports, you're probably really up to date with options. What's your best way of navigating this at an airport?
Yeah, I think I start with before I get to the airport. So that's always the first thing I think about is like you said, I never really want to go to an airport and be like, oh my God, I need to get food. It's one, if you're not familiar with the airport, it's hard to navigate. You're going to spend a lot of time walking around. Like a lot of airports nowadays do have quite a variety of food. So you can get whatever you need to suit whatever your goals are, but kind of take the guesswork out. If you're in a position where you can do that and you have a bit of time up your sleeve and you can go to say a cafe or even a grocery store or a supermarket and get a decent meal and just have that on the way to the airport or before you go, is probably your best case scenario. The next thing, and I tell all our athletes that are doing this, meal prep ahead. Like Loz said, you can take a lot of food on a plane with you, given that it's sealed, it's in a sealed container. And even if you take a meal prep, they'll heat it up on the plane for you. It's just when you land, you can't, if you've got changeovers and layovers, you can't take that. So a lot of our athletes that are traveling, they're cutting weight or whatever, all of them, we try to stick to their meal plan. We'll talk about timings and whatnot in a little bit when we talk about jet lag, but we take meal prepped food on there. If we always say before you go, have that meal that you're meant to have before you're going in, but then take your next 2 meals, depending on however long your flight is, take your snacks with you. Make sure that if you can take them with you, because it just saves this whole hassle in the first place.
Yeah. And especially if you do have, special dietary requirements, what you can and can't have. So having things on hand. And as you mentioned, Geordie, sealed things such as, snacks or meal prep, it's really cool to know that planes will actually heat up your meal for you. I've not experienced that.
Yeah. A lot of airports, like on the planes, like if you go to lounges, obviously you have access to a microwave in there. But yeah, a lot of airports nowadays will just have general microwaves. Once you're in the plane, like there, yeah, most stewardess will, air hostess, I should say, will heat up your meals for you.
Oh, the hostess with the mostest.
That's it.
Yeah, and I think, in terms of snacks, I'm a massive snack fiend. So I obviously haven't taken a meal prep on the plane before, but if you are thinking, okay, what can I take? Obviously, depending on what your specific requirements are or your plan, try and go for long life sealed products that have a high protein content, because protein is the macronutrient that's going to keep us fuller for longer. It also, if we're getting really technical, it's got the highest thermic effect of food in terms of your body has to work a bit harder to digest it. So in a way, you're getting more bang for your buck. It's going to be supporting lean muscle mass. But the big thing really is with that satiety, because as we mentioned, Geordie, with boredom eating, if you're actually quite satiated after a meal, you're going to be less inclined to boredom snack or to feel that exacerbated hunger. So going for protein options, whether that's beef jerky, trail mix, protein bars, something that even though it's weird to drink it not cold, is long life milk, such as say an Up and Go, or similar type of drink, because it doesn't need to be refrigerated. Good source of protein, calcium, carbs, or your nutrients as well. Fresh fruit, things such as apples or bananas that, you can just eat. You don't really need to cut it up, or those types of things are just really convenient to have if you can. Prep before you go, chuck some in your bag and just have them, so that one, you save money buying them at the airport, and two, you've got something in case you get hungry.
Yeah, and I think protein especially is important because it's the hardest thing to find at airports too. Like it's quite easy to find like very carby options or even fatty options when you're walking around. You're like, how do I put together this meal? It's quite hard to find good high protein snacks. And I think things like protein bars, beef jerkies, like most trail mixes, most airports will have those things. I always tell my guys as well, like take a protein shake with you, but like see whoever you get your protein, or see if they do those sample packs that are sealed, and see if you can take 2 or 3, because especially being an athlete, you're going to have higher protein requirements. Even if you're eating the plain food and you get that, I guarantee in that little box that you're getting, that's not having enough protein for you. Like Loz said, it's going to be really important for satiating yourself, so you're not hungry later on, but you have higher protein requirements. So making sure you've got good protein snacks so you can just meet your requirements while you're traveling is really important.
Yeah, sorry, Geordie, about the noise. We've got a truck outside, one of the beauties of a home office.
Yeah, this is a good episode. Loz has a truck outside. I've got people putting in new internet drilling into my wall, so apologies for the background noise.
This podcast is an absolute write-off already.
But I think this is a really good point that I always tell guys as well. If you are going through that meal prep as well and you're going to prep it, obviously food safety and food hygiene is really important. I think people kind of like not laugh about it, but it is a thing, right? Like I think where we are in our country, you kind of don't think about it a lot because we have such easy access to refrigeration. But if you ever go to like third world countries, like you see, this is a real problem, like keeping cold, like food adequately cold, and, keeping it at the right temperature for the right amount of time, and knowing when to throw food out is really important. So first off the gate, like make sure you have a little esky or a little freezer bag that you can take with you, and you can keep all of this cool, and you want to keep it at a good temperature until you can hand it off to the hostess to heat it up for you.
Yep. Yeah. Food safety is a big one. And I think as well, we are so lucky in Australia. We don't really have to think twice about it at all. But again, you always get those people, I get it on social media, is, oh, why do you always encourage things out of a packet? And yes, I understand, you shouldn't always have processed foods, so to speak. But the beauty of those types of foods in these circumstances is that they're sealed fresh. They don't require refrigeration. Obviously, depending on what it is, doesn't need to be heated up either. So that whether it's been in a 50-degree car or it's been in the bottom of your esky, that it's going to be safe to eat at whatever time you choose to have it, because it's sealed. It doesn't have a temperature requirement. So with traveling, the beauty, obviously, of having these kind of pre-packaged snacks is that less risk of food safety issues. But yeah, carry an esky with you. Who cares if you look like a dork? I was in my 20s going through uni. I would carry an esky to uni every single day. All my dietitian friends, we'd all rock up with our esky bags looking like absolute losers. But we had heaps of food, and we knew that our food was going to be perfect, not spoiled by the time we had it. So food safety is a big thing. And especially if you are traveling for competition, you don't want to waste a day, 2 days, 3 days without gastrointestinal issues because you've gotten food poisoning along the way. And, the easiest thing to compare this to is Bali belly. Anyone out there that's been to, Indonesia, they've had a bad case of the stomach bug, you know how awful that can be and how debilitating that can be. And if you've only got 1-2 days between getting to your location and having to compete, you're not setting yourself up very well. So even though food safety seems kind of lame, it's very important, especially as you mentioned, Geordie, if you are happening to travel to a third world country, it's something to consider because not all countries are as safe and as onto it as Australia. So COVID's been beautiful for that in terms of must sanitize, and there's sanitizer everywhere. So if you can't wash your hands, make sure you're always sanitizing your hands before eating. As you mentioned, have an esky bag, even suss out if the hotel you're going to be going to has a fridge or a microwave, so that again, you can think, okay, well, if I go to the shop and I buy some yogurts, I've actually got somewhere to store it. So again, being sure of your hotel facilities. Tap water, I find, is a big one too. Even traveling around Australia, tap water tastes a little bit different everywhere, but generally speaking, it's safe to drink. However, some people can be quite sensitive to different waters. So if in doubt, don't fill up your water bottles from the tap, go to the store, buy some pre-bottled water. I know it's not food, but what you drink as well can impact kind of your stomach. So I think being really mindful of these things when traveling, especially if you have a really close turnover between arriving at your destination and training or competing or whatever the purpose of your travel is.
Yeah, that's a good point. And 2 reasons there is why that's a good point is I think after COVID, everyone's so sick of sanitizing and washing their hands so much that I've noticed in airports, people just don't do it as much. Even before COVID, like I remember going to China in 2018, every overseas trip I've ever done, I've always had stacks of sanitizer in this, and I walk around to splash it on my athlete's hands wherever we go, because you need to remember, like airports and airplanes are inherently dirty places, and they do everything they can to keep them clean, but there's just so much foot traffic, so much people, so much going on. There's going to be a lot of transmission of lots of different germs everywhere you go. Every surface is going to have something on it. So being that person and being proactive with that and having hand sanitizer and being able to do that, whenever you're putting anything in your mouth, make sure you've washed your hand, you've sanitized, you've done. That's a good point about the water. I see this a lot at airports and on planes. People like even brushing their teeth when they go to the plane, they don't take a water bottle with them. Like you get water bottles on the plane, take one with you that you drink. And then when the hostess give you a water bottle or they're handing out drinks, take one and use that one just for brushing your teeth. So like you're not drinking that you've just taken into the lavatory, into the bathroom. Keep that spare one just for that, because you don't want to be using that recycled water. Same as when you're at the airport. I've seen so many people brush their teeth just using the taps there. And like, even if you are in a decent country, it's like, don't do it. Like be more proactive, especially if you're an athlete.
I'm just having severe flashbacks now to every single time I have brushed my teeth in the plane bathroom with the plain water. And I'm sure so many people right now are thinking the exact same thing. I can't believe I've never considered taking a water bottle in because that water is still going in my mouth. Yeah, okay, cool. Well, next time I travel, I'll be sure to remember this, Geordie.
Yeah, I hope you had some chewing gum or something afterwards.
Yeah, most likely, I'm sure. Gosh. Yeah, see, back when I used to skate, I was traveling to Europe a few times a year, and it's such big, stints of travel. You're always having to like think about everything. It's so much to think about, but obviously I just quite missed the mark in terms of the whole bathroom scenario.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I think the next point before we move on and talk about hydration or anything, I think jet lag and timing of your meals, this is a really important thing, and something that I picked up after I read Matt Walker's book, especially with travel, and I've seen this work really, really well with all of our athletes, myself included, anyone we travel with, is as soon as you get on that flight, set your clock, like your wristwatch or your phone, or get some type of indication of the time zone that you're going to. So as soon as you can start eating in that time zone. And this is another thing, it goes for sleep as well. If you can time it so you can sleep and then wake up and get some morning light and start getting into that time zone. Obviously, all of these things are just small markers, and your circadian rhythm is going to be out of whack anyway, but they'll help you kick into that much faster. Your mealtime and eating is they call it a Zergot or whatever the weird German name is for it. Your timing of when you eat is an influencer on your circadian rhythm. And that's going to be built into that new time zone. So the quicker that you can get that going, the quicker you're going to flip your circadian rhythm to getting more familiar with that. So I encourage all our athletes, okay, when we get on this plane, we come up with a game plan. What time is it when you get on that plane in the place that you're going? And let's plan your eating schedule for what you're going to be doing for the first few days. And let's get into that schedule as fast as we can. You then have to line that up with your sleep as well to make sure that you get, and that can be a bit tricky at times. You're probably never going to get it perfect. Take it from someone who does this every other week. You're probably never going to get it perfect, but it does make a difference. It does make a big difference if you can get that eating pattern and that sleep trickled over into that new time zone as soon as you get on that plane.
And is that something you found really helps yourself as well? Or are you there, eating at whatever time of the clock and the athlete's next to you just waiting till dinner time?
Definitely do, especially if I have back-to-back travel and you do it a lot. It makes a big difference, right? Because it's something that I noticed at the back end of this last trip when I had those few trips back to back. I didn't do it coming back. I did it every time when I was going in and I was going into work. But when I finished all the work and I was coming back home, I thought, well, stuff it, whatever. I can just lounge around. And it was the worst. Obviously, it was the worst jet lag I had. And there was a lot of things that contributed to that. But even food, like my appetite was all out of whack. Whereas every other time where I put that, it fell into place much faster than when I didn't do it on the way back.
Okay, tried and tested, TFD approved, jet lag hack.
Tried and tested. And I think the next thing, we're talking about flights a lot, and I'm kind of like the hydration advocate nowadays, but this is a big thing that I see as well. And there's 2 points I want to make is that one, it's super important on the plane, but there is a nuance and there is a bit of skill to staying hydrated on a plane so that you can eat your meals and hit that sleep rhythm and get decent sleep on a plane, if that is something that exists for you. Not everyone can sleep well on a plane. But one of the biggest things that disrupts sleep when we're flying on a plane is having to get up and use the bathroom. And we know when we're up there at the high altitude, it's going to be, and we're in that plane, we're in that compressed air, we're going to be urinating more frequently. So the thing is that we need to be really mindful of is getting electrolytes in our water. And I see this all the time when people get on planes, they have their big bottles of water, which is great. They're keeping up their fluids, but then they're just smashing these fluids. And that person's just going to the bathroom every like 30, 40 minutes. They're interrupting the people around them. Get a really good electrolyte solution, put those electrolytes in, because that's going to encourage your body to hold it more. So you're not just going to be passing out that fluid that you're putting in.
Really important point there, and so true. I think that's probably why I'm an aisle seat person on these long haul flights, just so that much as I love looking out the window, I know for a fact I'm going to be up and down that aisle to the bathroom so many times. So yeah, having some hydration solution, whether it's Trainade powder, you can just scoop it into your cup or your little bottle on the plane, or whether it's a tablet, one of those fizzer tablets, whatever works best for you. Storing them in your bag, it doesn't take up much space. Having that on board is going to really help kind of get the most out of your fluid intake, because it is hard. It's almost like, pros and cons, because you want to stay hydrated, but you also know that comes at a cost of increased urination. And, I just did a big road trip across the country and wanted to always stay hydrated. So I had heaps of water, black coffee in the car at all times. But it's that constant fight in your head of, oh, I'm really thirsty, I need to stay hydrated, versus, okay, there isn't another stop for 400 Ks. I'm going to have to hold it. So, maximizing the fluid that you are having with an electrolyte, partnering them up together is a really, really good tip there.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue, right? Because let's talk about the road trip, because you did this massive ludicrous in the amount that you drove, but very, very cool in what you guys actually did, where you did drive across Australia, started Gold Coast all the way to Perth. You went through the middle, down the top, bottom, or how did you go about it?
So drove from Queensland to WA, down via the south, so pretty much followed the whole southern end of Australia. Is 5,200 kilometers, and had long days, but also made it a little bit of a vacay. But it definitely was, obviously being a dietitian, I had the bag there in the middle of the car, like a nesty bag stocked up with snacks. Always had some water bottles in the car with me at all times. Kind of made a coffee in the morning, black coffee, to keep us awake on the road. But yeah, it was a good eye-opening experience in terms of, especially for me being celiac, one of the things I thought I was going to struggle with was my options, because Outback Australia, the only people that really do this route are truckies, and a truckie doesn't care if their toasted sandwich is gluten-free or not. So I kind of went into this trip thinking, oh gosh, I'm probably going to starve on this road trip. There's not going to be any options anywhere. But there's always ways around it. For example, whenever we were in town, we'd grab snacks as the ones I mentioned before, protein nut bars or apples or up and goes, trail mixes, all those types of things that I could just keep in the car at all times and didn't have to worry about them going off. So always had high protein snacks in the car, always had a couple of liters of water in bottles because again, $7 for a bottle of water in the middle of the country. Probably don't really want to pay that when fuel's also, $2.70 a litre to match the price tag. But prepping every day, it doesn't take that long. Grab some snacks, grab some water, make sure you're set. We knew our destination, we knew how many times a day we'd stop. We'd kind of schedule in our meals around those times. And then in between, we'd just sip on water or maybe some black coffee. I suppose the beauty in terms of, only driving during the day, caffeine didn't necessarily disrupt my sleep. Whereas if you are traveling across time zones in a plane, it's something that you need to consider because apart from the dehydration factor with the increased urination, we all know that caffeine has a stimulatory effect and keeps us awake. So for me, it wasn't necessarily an issue because I was traveling during the daytime only. But when you are traveling, you do need to be careful of those cheeky coffees and teas when the hostesses are walking down the aisle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the half-life of caffeine is 12 hours, right? So this is what a lot of people don't get if they land in a new place, even if it's a midday and you've had 2 cups of coffee, 50% of that caffeine is going to still be in your system at midnight that night. But in saying that, it's not all bad. I always encourage our guys, if we're landing early to a new country and like they might not have the best sleep, I always encourage them, get that caffeine and help you stay up and bank up kind of that sleep for you, and then just try to get back and stay up and get into your rhythm as fast rather than just like not having it and sleeping here and there and really confusing your body more. Like utilize caffeine if you're getting in there early, but be very intelligent about it. So you're not overloading your system and then just blocking all these receptors. And then all of a sudden everything clears out and you have a huge crash at some random time, or you can't just sleep and you're up until 5 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Caffeine can be friend or foe depending on how you use it. So definitely in those aspects, if say, for example, I know in the past when I've gone to Canada, I've left around 9 a.m. Australia time, 14-hour flight, arrived at 7 a.m. the same day, Canada time. So in order to adjust, you want to try and stay awake all day and you're fighting that tiredness, you're fighting it, but having a coffee in that instance is going to help keep you awake so that you can have a better sleep the next night. And it is really important, as you've mentioned, Geordie, to try and stay on top of your sleep because as we all know, being tired can mess up our hunger hormones. And if, for example, you are a combat athlete that's already cutting weight, you're probably feeling a bit hungry, compounding that with fatigue and feeling tired, you're just more so going to want to try and gravitate towards those foods that you kind of have to avoid for a few more days.
Yeah. And I think the last point, and I know you did this as well on your road trip, and I've started doing this a lot in my travel as well, is meal timings and how much you're eating when. And I'm not saying like I'm not having to go at fasting or anything or skipping breakfast, but I have found something that is hugely beneficial. This is probably not so much for athletes that are cutting weight or whatever, but if you're just going traveling and you want to stay on top of it, having a big part of your calories in the morning and then using that to sustain you throughout the day so you can go do whatever, and then having another meal at nighttime, even if you just have a snack or a high protein snack in the middle somewhere. I have found that by far to be the best eating plan, at least for me. And when I've got Jack and Ryan coming out, that's what we tend to do. And it seems to work really well and help kick you over.
It prevents that hunger that is going to hit. And I think there's nothing worse than being hungry. So if you can start the day off with a really full energy tank, you know that you can go as long as needed if you don't have food, you don't have a road trip stop or anything like that. As well, I think, Geordie, actually something we didn't really necessarily touch on in the whole preparing to travel phase is exploring the location that you're going to be traveling to and getting familiar with, okay, what grocery stores are around, what cafes are nearby, what are my hotel facilities like, is there a restaurant there, do I have a car, do I have to rely on public transport? Because what you have in your vicinity is going to really dictate what you're going to be eating. So I think we always encourage people to kind of look around ahead of schedule. Okay, yep, traveling here. I know there's a supermarket 5 minutes away. I go to that supermarket often because I'm in the same country. I know what I'm going to stock my fridge with because I've also looked on the hotel website and I know if my hotel room has a fridge and or microwave. So I think in terms of, planning our meals and snacks is great, but also thinking a little bit further ahead in terms of what facilities am I going to have once I arrive at my destination can really help you and take the stress away as well. Because if you know there's a Whole Foods across the road, you know you're likely going to be able to get some healthy snacks. Whereas if you're traveling to a location and there's a Macca's, Hungry Jack's, KFC on every corner, you know, you're going to be a little bit more limited in terms of what you've got access to. So just coming up with a game plan as to, okay, where am I going to go once I arrive at my destination to try and meet my nutritional goals as best possible.
Yeah. And I think last point before we close up, I think everyone always asks this when they say, yeah, but I've only got access to these things, right? I've only got access to a McDonald's and a Burger King and whatever else. And I say, look, if that's the only thing you've got, you just need to be smart about it. And this is where bringing something like a protein powder or these bars or whatever can be really useful, because yeah, okay, if that's all you've got, then let's go get that. But we need to bump that meal up so you are hitting your requirements. And like I said, one of the biggest and hardest things for athletes is getting protein. So yeah, you can go get your Egg McMuffin meal for sure with your flat white or whatever, but you need to have a protein shake with that. And then you need to have like a Greek yogurt and blah, blah. So we can bump that protein up. Make sure that you're not just having like one type of carbohydrate. I find like if you're just getting all this, like the bread and whatever, go find, okay, maybe you can get a granola and put that in with your yogurt as well and bump up your meals and have it that way. Because the reality is sometimes we just can't get to a Whole Foods. We can't do that when we've only got a McDonald's and that's the only thing that we have access to.
Yeah. And again, it's just making the best of what you've got, you know, acknowledging the fact that, okay, I'm traveling, my schedule might be a little bit messed up, but being okay with that, because I know if it was a bikini competitor traveling across the world, they'd be having an anxiety attack that they can't get their 100 grams of MyFitnessPal certified Greek yogurt. However, you know, being flexible and adaptable in the mind to be like, okay, this is what I've got. I'm going to work with it as best as I can. If it means having to go to McDonald's, I'm just going to make the choice that's the best for me in the moment. And as you said, Geordie, with the protein powders, again, reiterating the fact that they are supplements to supplement your diet. We aren't relying on these wholly. They're simply there to boost up the macronutrient profile of our meal, and we're not relying on them fully.
Yeah, I think that's a great spot to finish up. So I'd love to know you guys though, if you guys are listening to this and you think, hey, you know what, I've got some even better travel hacks you guys haven't thought about, then send them to me. I travel a lot. All of us travel a lot. So especially now that COVID's opened up, a lot more people listening to this will be traveling as well. So if you've got some awesome travel hacks that you use for your nutrition or whatever you're doing, if you're a combat athlete, you cut weight, you find this works, or whether you're just an enthusiast or you like holidaying and you like going around, but you like eating a certain way and you don't really want to go out and just eat everything you can, tell us how you go. How do you navigate that? So shoot us a message and let us know. But till next time, Loz, we'll chat soon.
Cheers.
And there it is, another episode of the TFD Performance Podcast. This podcast will be available through the podcast app, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and if you follow along our socials at @the_fight dietitian, you can see all of the best bits from our podcast episodes. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys for the next episode of the TFD Performance Podcast.